Dubai time, 7:30 India time, we start. So I'm sorry to confuse you, Ravi. So yeah, let's start with the seven realities. Ashok is there. Ashok ji, you want to read?
Yeah, definitely.
Jai
Avatar,
Baba. Jai-
but I can't see the.
Oh, sorry.
Should I get my book? One second.
No, I got it. Is it visible now?
Yes, yes.
Please.
Avatar, um, Avatar Meher Baba ki Jai. The seven realities: existence, love, sacrifice, renunciation, knowledge, control, and surrender. I give no importance to creed, dogma, caste, or the performance of religious ceremonies and rites, but to the understanding of the following. 1. The only real existence is that of the one and only God, who is the self in every finite self. 2. The only real love is the love for this infinity God, which arouses an intense longing to see, know, and become one with its truth, God. 3. The only real sacrifice is that in which, in pursuance of this love, all things, body, mind, and position, welfare, and even life itself are sacrificed. 4. The only real renunciation is that which abandons, even in the midst of worldly duties, all selfish thoughts and desires. 5. The only real knowledge is the knowledge that God is the inner dweller in good person and in so called bad, in saint and in so called sinner. This knowledge requires you to help all equally as circumstances demand without expectation of reward. When compelled to take part in a dispute, to act without the slightest trace of enmity or hatred, to try to make others happy with brotherly or sisterly feeling for each one, and to harm no one in thought, word, and deed, not even those who harm you. 6. The only real control is the discipline of the senses to abstain from indulgence in low desires, which alone ensures absolute purity of character. 7. The only real surrender is that in which poise is undisturbed by any adverse circumstance, and the individual amidst every kind of hardship is resigned with perfect calm to the will of God. Avatar Meher Baba ki Jai.
Avtar, Meher Baba ki Jai. Thank you, Ashok. So let's get to where we are. Our breadcrumbs. We are in session six. So we have finished 14 chapters, and we start with the transference to Toka. The, it's a rather British way or rather old way of use from a usage of the word standpoint. But here we are. Transference to Toka. Namita, are you in a position to read? I rarely ask you because I think you're busy or you come in later and I don't know whether you're available. Are you in a good position to read for some time?
Yes, sir. Jai Baba.
Jai Baba, thank you so much. Please, over to you. Chapter 15.
The transference to Toga, those often quoted and most significant words of the Master, it will all have to be done afresh, did convey some very drastic changes of affairs to many of his disciples. Yet no one amongst them thought at the time that even the surroundings will have to be changed, and that a fresh site for a Meher ashram was necessary until the Master took them by surprise one fine morning on the 7th of May 1928. Amongst the visitors of the Master that day was one Mr. Abdullah Harun Jafar, a furniture merchant and estate agent of Pune. In the course of this stray talk with Master, The gentleman suggested chance of a bargain of a fine site at Pune in a certain locality, which he said would make an ideal site for the Meher Ashram. It was a bolt from the blue for those present, when the master readily fell in with the suggestion and conveyed, "Yes, I would like to change the site now." Those who have those who have come sufficiently in contact with the master know that his mere words means against costs and consequences. One would even think twice before changing one's residence in the same city. But for the master, his apparently offhand remark is connected with the changing of the whole colony of about 400 souls from one station to another, tended to make it a certain fact. Preparations to enable the master to have a personal look at the suggested site were immediately set on the foot, as if the spell of a fixed stay was broken with the recent visit of Hazrat Babajan. The following day, 8th of May, His Holiness set out for Pune at about 4:30 in the morning. Besides the apparent reason of looking up the proposed site, the visit proved a very significant one. Hazrat Abdullah, the Chota Baba, who was so far kept all aloof and isolated since he became enlightened, was for the first time taken out on this trip to Pune, while that very morning Hazrat Babajan started from the other end and re-inspired Mehrabad with her august presence for the second time. It was as if the two masters had exchanged their respective positions for a few hours. During the time the master inspected the site of Pune, Hazrat Babajan blessed the boys and disciples of Mehrabad with pats and caresses, especially to those love affected ones who were feeling ill at ease through the master's short absence. On their On their respective return journeys, both masters started almost simultaneously from the two opposite ends, since the two cars crossed each other just halfway between Pune and Ahmednagar. The sight of Pune did not appear to the master, yet shifting the Meher Ashram from its present surroundings. He conveyed, is imperative now after the old man's Babajan's second visit. Navsari in Gujarat, Daman in Portuguese India, and Singdah, the famous fort of Shivaji near Pune, were the three
Singed,
spots. What is it called?
singed,
Singar.
singed.
Singar.
Singed.
The,
Yeah,
the
singed.
famous
Yeah.
they say, Singar, the famous fort of Shivaji near Pune, were the three spots that came under discussion in the probable places where to the institution may be shifted. On the 15th of May, 4:30 a.m., the master left Mehrabad to visit the proposed sites in a motor. I got a motor car driven by Mr. R.K. Irani, who had since returned from England. The next chapter contains the result of Mr. Irani's visit to England. The party went straight to Singhad Fort and inspected the site there that its owner Khan Abdul Bidi Padamji had recently been generous enough in placing at Master's entire disposal. But it did not meet with His Holiness's fancy, mainly for these two reasons: the very heavy rainfall at the place and the inconvenience of climbing the great height of the parents and guardians of the boys, who may come to see them. Otherwise, conveyed the master with a wistful look around the beautiful surroundings that is an ideal state. It is my old place. From Singar, the party went straight to Bombay to catch the Gujarat mail, but they arrived there 3 hours too late. We wouldn't go now. We won't go now. conveyed the master. Let Chanji FH Dada Chanji proceed to Gujarat in the morning and report. We shall return to Mehrabad tomorrow. And accordingly, master set out for the return journey to the following noon.
So if we can take a pause here. So I think two, three things that I wanted to bring up, and I'm sure others can also bring up anything that they want. So why do you think Baba called Baba Jan as the old man? I don't know.
I
Right?
will tell
So
you. I've
yeah,
been
sure.
reading this. I've been reading Lord Meher.
Uh-huh.
She liked to be called as a man, and if there were people
Okay.
who would call her Amma Jan, she would get very angry with them, and she would say, "I'm not a woman. I'm a
I'm a
man."
man. Yes, yes,
Yeah,
yes, 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 yes. I've come across this
yeah. So
sometime
I think
long back.
it's connected to that.
Very interesting. Correct. So she used to say, yeah, yes, I am a man. I'm a man. Yeah,
Yeah.
correct. Yeah. Thank you.
And they would call him then Amma Sahab, Amma Sahib or something like that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
I think there is something
So,
in this. There is something in the spiritual world, not as a common jingo. Something to do with the female and the male. You know, the avatar always comes in the male form, and the perfect master's function also is connected with either female or male. Um, yeah, there's. I mean, I have not read in the Lord Meher why she wanted to be called as a male with a male name rather than Amma or Maji or something like that.
Maji.
Manya, yeah.
Yeah.
I can't help but have a cheeky comment here. I mean, it took a good 70 years later for fluidity to become as popular as it is now, huh? Gender
Mm.
fluid.
Yeah, no, it's
Right?
for a different reason, I think, beyond our conception.
Yeah. No, no, no. I mean, in the sense that I don't know, were you all there when I discussed this a few weeks back? This whole uh, gender thing was opened up to me in a very interesting Baba Zoom call about a couple of months back, where firstly I was extremely uncomfortable about this whole thing, but then I have a greater Baba led understanding and greater relevance to what's happening around us, and hence I would say more than tolerance, I would say appreciation of what's happening. Yeah, I
What
just
happened? I don't know. I was not there. So
no.
what
So
was that?
there was this beautiful live call I joined where there was there was talk about this. There was talk about LGBTQ. There was talk about this is a Baba call. Okay, this is a
Okay.
Baba Zoom, and we had and as it turned out, many of the participants actually very openly talked about their senses, their, what do you call it, tendencies, or their uh, affiliations within the LGBTQ yeah, setup. I mean, I really don't know much about this, but
Mm.
I either have shied away or have been dismissive of it. But the way they unveiled it and also pointed out uh, specific references in Baba's life and among the early followers of Baba, on some of them also coming out of the closet and talking about it to Baba and so on and so forth. Right. For example, till that call, I did not know about Don Stevens. I did not know about many others that were mentioned in the call. And right on the call, like I said, there were many of them. And in all, I thought that Baba in his Avataric Advent is actually bringing a lot more respect and bringing them to the mainstream. I'm not a big, I mean, so that's all I took away from that call. And I have a newfound respect, and I no longer am as dismissive as I used to be about this whole movement thing. I'm dismissive of the movement, not the people, right? So about bringing too much importance to all of these alphabet representations. So I have a lot more tolerance and respect. That's all I would say.
Jai Baba, there's this link I have I have in my hands. I will read it, and it is from Meher Baba Dhyana.net. I will read
Okay.
what it says. Am I allowed? Should I?
You have all the permission. Please go ahead.
So it says Baba on homosexuality. Homosexuals should avoid promiscuity, sex with multiple partners. In the 1960s, Alan Yowell visited Meher Baba in India. Alan was a young man from England and a friend of Don Stephen. Baba took Alan during their daily walks in the garden to ask him anything he wanted to. One of the things Ellen asked him about was homosexuality. Baba told him that homosexuality was generally the result of the soul having taken a series of incarnations in one sex and then switching to the other sex. A soul may have incarnated a number of times in female form and then takes a male form. In the male form, the mindset feels sexually attracted to men, as it has for many lifetimes, even though one is oneself now in a male form. A soul who has incarnated many times in male forms, when it first takes a female form, might in that new form still feel sexually attracted to women rather than men. Baba said that for homosexuals, the one thing to avoid is promiscuity. He said that it was best to try and find one partner and stay with that person rather than have sex with many people. This is what Baba generally told heterosexuals as well. He only recommended celibacy for advanced aspirants and then only in certain cases. Adi K. Rani said that Baba did not approve of homosexuality. He said homosexuals' behavior is not normal and that they should try to become normal. Jai Meher Baba. Okay. So that's my 2 cents, what I read. And I'm just sharing. I mean, not my
Yeah.
opinion. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. So I am not here to either be in approval, be in disapproval, or try to position Baba's message. I was only quoting, no, just to restate my position. I was just quoting my personal uh, uh, reaction to this whole thing. And I mean, I'm grouping it with a lot of things that are happening together apart from gender fluidity, right? So
Yeah.
you have gender fluidity, you have the schools and how they are reacting to it in the US, which I still think is ridiculous. You have the greater, broader uh, definition around what's going on in the West and now in many parts of the world, which is characterized as wokeism. And apart from that, you also have LGBTQ. But then I just got in that call a moment where I said, "Oh, so it's not really that Baba didn't have to grapple with all of this, and he was in the thick of it." So if you had so many of the mandali, like I'm surprised with the episode that you just read out, he was in the thick of it back then, and that's the stirring of the pot that he has, probably done to bring it all out and bring it to the fore. So I don't want to go off on a tangent and discuss this at greater length. But like I said, this is what happened to me personally, and I am I'm thankful to Baba for showing me that. Yeah,
Jai Baba.
So what's
Jai
your
Baba, Jai Baba.
position now, Kartik? What's your position? Oh, I came in late.
See,
Your
I'm
audio
so
is
glad
bad.
that you brought it
I
up.
don't know
I
about
was
Adi
like,
Kairani's comments, though.
Yeah, so that's Adike
Yeah.
Irani personally, right? But you should listen. You should have been on that call. Maybe I'll try to find that video if it is. No, it was not recorded. I don't know if it was recorded. So I'll find out. But
So where is
I
this
heard you.
group? Yeah.
No, it's just Baba Zoom. So it's just Baba Zoom, and so again, I don't remember seeing all the faces.
False names?
No,
Hey,
it doesn't
Mahu,
matter.
you're not audible. Ravi,
Yeah.
what are you saying?
No, it doesn't matter. How
Yeah,
many times, I mean, some of us married here, how many of us talked about our personal sexual life, right? We never did.
correct. Mm-hmm.
And how does it matter if some person is straight or has a different preference? So
Yeah,
it
yeah.
doesn't matter. We are focused on loving Baba, trying to
Mm-hmm.
learn Baba's words. That is
Mm-hmm.
our focus,
Agreed.
you know.
Can
So it doesn't
can
matter.
I make a comment?
Is Mahu trying to
Mahu,
talk?
we'd love you
Let
to make a comment, but you're hardly visible, audible. You got to do something to your
wait
audio
a
that.
minute. I need to change my volume. How is that now? Is that good?
No.
No,
Not
not good
good?
enough. Yeah, not good enough. Little better. Very feeble still.
Oh, I don't know what to do then, because just briefly, I must say that Robbie, the question is not whether it's their private matter or not, because they are have publicized this, particularly in the West, and they have taken it all to political level,
Yes.
using political forces and authorities to you should see how they're brainwashing small children in a school, promoting the homosexuality, and it's all LGBTQ behind it. And obviously people's sexuality, it's their private, it's like religion. Religion is people's private matter. They like to pray to God through their religion. They are entitled and every freedom. But once a government or other people come to take advantage of things in the name of religion, things matters. Same here. I like to say that you guys can go to Lord Meher online, because when we read it, Baba brought it up. Baba actually, in his trip in France, in Cannes, and Spain particularly, he does talk about homosexuality. And he says that it has increased so much and I need to work on it.
I mean, I can
And
barely hear
Yeah,
Mahu.
yeah. Audio is really, really bad.
But,
I had to strain to hear you, but I think
uh,
both
uh,
from
what?
others
but the thing is, there's nothing wrong. They're being affected. The LGBT group are being affected. So, and there is no other way than to politically bring the importance to that group. That's how the people started accepting more compared to about 10 years ago. Either black
well,
people or the
yeah,
LGBT,
so
whatever it is, people need to respect, period. As simple as that. They need to be given equal value in benefits and other things. If that is so, then there is no problem. But they are being affected. The black
so
people being affected, LGBT people were affected. So that's why the politically they need to bring in some more uh, rules or whatever conditions so that people don't do that. People are afraid.
Yeah.
yeah,
Anyway,
so I think
let's not,
let's not
let's not,
But
let's
can you
yeah,
can
so
you
with
digress,
all
but let's, yeah,
with
let's
all
focus on
respect, let's
Baba.
not continue on
Yeah.
this. I mean, it's a tangent. It's not any way connected to what we are reading.
Baba
I
is
am not trying
against
to
it.
stop
Just
this.
yeah.
Yeah, let's
Mahu,
let's
you're
let's
still not audible at all.
Okay, let
But
me
I know
try
you're
it.
trying to say
read.
something.
Let's read.
Okay.
Let's read.
Yeah, let's read. Yeah. So, yeah,
Uh,
Navita ji, please.
by the time the
Why
party began to ascend the famous Bohar Ghat between Kampoli and Kandala, it was
Khandala?
near
Khandala.
Kandala. It was nearing sunset, and the fine scenery of the towering hills was at its best. The sturdy car, Hudson Sport Super X 6 had so far stood the strain of so many miles well, save for a slight relaxation in the pulling power of her six-cylinder engine since the beginning of the return journey from Bombay. But as it was still going on merrily, Mr. R.K. Irani did not care to look up the slightly spluttering engine and let it go on the top speed over the Ghats when unexpectedly he soon had to put it in second speed. Even this was found insufficient after some time, and the engine had to be put in the first speed. The powerful six-seater car, with an overload of about 10 persons with their bags and baggage, somehow managed to climb the guards almost halfway. But here it suddenly slacked, then stopped for a moment, and before anybody could think what to do, it began to roll back. The situation was one of touch and go. Just a few yards, and there was a yawning chasm below. The car continued rolling back for all the attempts of Mr. Irani to stop it by pressing the foot brake, which also was found in disorder. Of course, there was a handbrake, but in the excitement of the moment, Mr. Irani forgot to use it, and I very much doubt if it would have averted the impending calamity at that critical stage, considering the heavy load of the vehicle, even if it had been brought into use. The situation became simply hopeless, and the difference between life and a horrible death was by mere inches. Two or three of the party managed to jump out, but the rest, including the master, had to remain in the car to face the situation. However, at the right moment, the master simply leaned on one side of the car, pressed it down with his hand, and lo, it stopped dead there and then. There are certain people who think the sign of the miracle as imperative in a perfect master, and it is simply for such of them that I have gone out of my way to giving prominence to this incident, as well as to others of the kind. Otherwise, my constant company with the master has confirmed me in that school of thought to which Kushal, Kushari, how to say that?
I think
Kushari,
Kushairi. Kushairi.
Kushari belonged, a saint who would be none the less a saint, says Kushari, if no miracles were wrought by him in the world. To come to the point again, the party climbed the remaining ghat partly on foot and partly in the car, in small numbers by turns, but between Telagaon and Shilwardi, about 20 miles from Pune, the car went through another ordeal. This time it was due to the huge tree that was lying across the road, invisible in the dim lights of the car. But with a crash and a lurch and the splittering noise of the glass screen that went into small bits, the car came out safe and sound. It was only when they had safely come out of the death trap that the party realized that what a close shave it was. On the contrary, none of the occupants got as much as a scratch, while the engine went on humming and spinning merrily, enabling the car to cover the remaining miles with a vengeance. But when the party reached the railway station at Pune, they saw in the bright light of the station lamps to what extent the car had been damaged. Besides the broken glass screen, the mud guards and radiator bonnet were badly twisted, while the fine radiator crest had disappeared completely. Immediately after the radiator was refilled and the party had some refreshments, the master ordered the journey to be resumed in the dead of the night. Thus, within 48 hours of the start, at the daybreak on the 17th of May, the master was back at Mehrabad. Still, he would think of no rest till the question of new site was decided. Discussions about the same continued when someone suggested the name of Toka the moment he heard about the possibility of an ideal site there without any consideration for the physical fatigue of the last exertion. The master left Mehrabad again, the same evening for Toka, a village at a distance of about 50 miles from Mehrabad. Simply at a cursory glance of the site, the master not only approved Toka, but the very next day set all the external machinery at his command into motion in acquiring the necessary land for the whole of the colony of Mehrabad, which was to be shifted there. The arrange the details soon was one of his commands to the Mehrabad authorities so that we can shift there before the monsoon sets in. The way the master and disciples worked day and night and the speed with which the whole of Mehrabad encampment was removed is a story by itself. Suffice it is it suffice it to say here that simultaneously with the unmaking of the camp at Arangong, the new Mehrabad was in the making at Toka. So there was no wonder that within 15 days of the approval on the 3rd of June 1928, not only the whole colony was completely transferred to Toka, but also for the very day the normal life and daily routine was also resumed here. And very soon the one time thorny, uneven, and barren jungle like place was transformed into a fine and idle colony. Whatever vital reasons he might have for this dramatic and costly transference, the hurried selection of the site by the master appears significant from many viewpoints. The half sleeping the half-sleeping village of Toka, situated midway between the historical and mystical cities of the Deccan, that's Ahmednagar and Aurangabad. It was very poor in material process, the only sign of modern civilization about its rustic surroundings in the solitary little red post office that hangs by one of the half-broken village gates. But on the other hand, the place is exceptionally rich in its picturesque and charming scenery, situated uh, as it is on the junction of the two rivers, Godavari and Pravahara. The grand bathing ghats along the Godavari, with numerous flights of stairs and bath seats, arcades and balustrades, whisper history to one in a contemplative mood. Toka and the junction of Godavari and Pravaha, owning to their unique situation, are recognized by the Hindus as Allahabad and the Ganges of the Deccan, respectively. But since the railways had shortened the distance to the original Ganges and brought within reach of all many other places of pilgrimage, Toka has lost its one time popularity. It is worthwhile remembering here that Swami Ramdas and Hazrat Sai Baba of Shirdi, both of whom bear a close spiritual connection with the Master, passed a good time of their lives in the vicinity of Toka.
So transfer they did. So they moved from Mehrabad to Toka. So we take another pause here and also maybe a rotation in the reading. Thank you, Namita ji.
Thank you.
Any reactions to why this move is happening? And I'm amazed at the speed of things, of course. 15 days. And it really means setting up the places to live, moving all the stuff to cook and eat. And somewhere in this chapter, it's mentioned that the number of people making up this composing this move is almost 400 at that time. So I mean, it's amazing the way Baba worked and the people around him. And if you just set all these things in context, how things were slow from a transportation and infrastructure standpoint, how people were and how we had facilities, and then see it all in that context. And it's amazing to think of what happened then. Okay, so let's go to chapter 16, the mission to the west. So anybody wants to read can volunteer and unmute, or I will nominate. Okay, nobody wants to read. No problem. So uh,
No, I'll read.
yeah, please, Ashok, go ahead.
Yeah. Chapter
Hey, Baba.
16. Jai Baba. Avatar Meher Baba ki Jai. One second. Uh, Chapter 16. The mission to the west. We already know that Mr. R.K. Rani left Bombay for England on the 10th of March 1928. One of his letters received from London on the 14th of April conveyed a very disappointing picture. He had found that amongst the poorer classes in England, the careers of the youngsters were pre-settled by their parents, unlike that of an Indian boy, who is generally educated without any pre-arranged plan in the early stages of his education, and thus is easily available for any kind of training. Then naturally he found that it was a country where Maya ruled supreme and materialistic ideas held sway. And those who talked of spirituality generally meant psychic phenomena or discussed the subjects of divine illumination, God realization, truth, experience as lightly as one would do geometry and geography without knowing that those terms are only possible to be talked over, but the spirit underlying them could actually be realized, experienced, seen, heard, and felt. In short, for all its brilliant streets, well decorated shops, and vast and magnificent network of railways, etc., Mr. Irani found it through experience what he so far used to hear, that Europe was comparatively very poor in the matter of spirituality in its real sense. And consequently, no wonder he found the disseminating of truth a spade work there. The cable received from him on the 16th of April at Hyderabad said, "Some success, task difficult."
Actually, I don't know if you've heard the name Anne Ross, especially Mahu and Ravi, given here in the US. She talks about this trip through which I think the name is Ross Keating, the one of the Baba followers from the West who came to Baba because of this trip of R.K. Irani. So she's I think from the family, the daughter of Keating, and she talks about how uh, her parents came to, or rather, I think it's her father came to Baba through this trip. So through this R.K. Irani trip, yeah. So maybe I broke up the flow. So you want to read again from this?
Yeah, I will. So this
Yeah.
is the chapter mission to the west, right?
Yes, yes. No, no. From this line, the
Okay.
cable.
The cable received from him on the 16th of April at Mehrabad said, "Some success, task difficult." While a subsequent letter contained a reference to certain inconvenience. It was therefore finally decided to recall Mr. Irani without going to other countries on the continent as was originally arranged. And the following cable was dispatched: "Don't bring boys, return." In the meantime, Mr. Irani had met with an 11th hour success and had almost arranged to bring some boys, but in face of this order, he postponed his scheme and, leaving instructions to local agents, returned to India. After his return, he succeeded in getting the master's sanction to call those boys and even arrange for their passage. but eventually they were not allowed to come. The West had failed to respond to the divine call so far it concerned with the sending of the boys to the Meher Ashram. Since bringing the boys to the Meher Ashram was apparently the all important purpose of the mission, it can be said to have proved a failure.
But impact it did have, like we saw the example that I cited. So no boys came, but then he talked to a lot of people and spread the word of Baba. So obviously something happened. Keep going.
Yes. But the following incident shows that it is not so. On the contrary, when political India was shouting itself hoarse with Simon go back and Simon welcome, when many political representatives of India had found it necessary, in the interest of their health, to stay in England. The solitary representative of spiritual India was silently doing his work, though himself unconscious of its real significance at that time, and even often being ridiculed for the peculiar life he led, since throughout the voyage and his stay in England, Mr. Irani had been ordered to remain only on bread, butter, and tea. In the darkest hour of his disappointment in England, Mr. Irani one day received a peculiar message. On the face of it, it was an ordinary letter under the signature of a certain Mr. X coming from Portsmouth. But the peculiarity was about its contents. The writer mysteriously acknowledged the receipt of Mr. Irani's message and invited him for an interview. With all his wits about him, he could not remember even having seen or heard of any Mr. X, not to speak of sending a message to him during his short stay in England. He naturally thought it to be a postal mistake and went to all the Iranis that he knew in London at the time, but none came forward to own the mysterious message. He therefore went to Portsmouth according to the address given in the letter at the appointed time. It was Mrs. Hicks who greeted him at the place and assured him that he was expected, and said that Mr. X had gone to the station for the purpose of receiving him. Nay, she even left him all to himself and went out to call back her husband so that Mr. Irani might not have to wait long, and he had not to remain in suspense for long, as Mr. X soon walked in and introduced himself. After the usual formalities were over, the gentleman dimmed the light and began to talk as if he were exchanging messages on a wireless apparatus, although he had nothing of the sort about him. In a low and impressive tone, Mr. X began to thrill his already stupefied listener with the following words: I see the master. It's 2 o'clock in the morning in India now. Here he exactly described the master's seat near the Meher Ashram. Other Eastern masters of his Meher Baba's stage are not easily accessible and don't like to be disturbed at such an hour. But he seems to be of a very loving nature. I have just told the master that will not allow the boys to be taken to India. But the master replies, there is no power on earth that can come in his way. He is not very keen about getting the boys. He wants to lay the spiritual cable between the East and the West. Up to now, East is looked after by the Eastern masters and the West by the Western masters. He wants to join both these sections, and that is the reason why he sent you Irari here. You're carrying with you, without your knowledge, a sort of wireless connection, and it affects all those whom we meet. Mr. X and the master have not seen each other in the ordinary way to this day. So here I just have an thought. So Baba was always working towards, uh, you know, bringing the East and the West together, that all are one. Any comments?
Yeah, I
Hello?
think more than all are one. Like he mentions here, Baba was obviously trying to integrate the ways of the people, especially when it comes to spirituality between the West and the East. And did he succeed? Boy, I mean, there are centers in Australia and US, obviously many followers who are very, very deeply connected with Baba even now. And lot of the work that we see today around continuing the avataric work and avataric legacy is actually led by the West, right? So, though he was born in the East, there is a bonhomie, there is a solidarity and collective uh, should I say, collective effort in doing the cause, working on the cause of the beloved, very beautifully, right? So there are so many initiatives. So overall, I think he's doing something very, very special in connecting the two. But also, again, to quote Baba, he said that a lot of his work is to reduce the imbalance between the material West and the spiritual east and try to make even that out, right? And I think that's already happening. So if you see the spread of spiritual movements and appeal of I mean, going back to God and so on and so forth, is on the rise, not just globally, but surely in the West as well, right? So there is a marked improvement in the numbers there. I'm also intrigued by why why Ramjoo is not mentioning the name of this person. So anybody knows who this is? This X who's been able to obviously visually see Baba, though he's never met him and has contact in this funny way. I mean, strange way. Okay, so let's continue. Chapter 17.
70.
Yeah.
History
Uh,
repeated. Within 10 days of the transference to Mecca, the master commenced conveying hints about reverting to fasting and self imprisonment as before. While pending the erection of premises for Prem Ashram, the inmates of this section used to be lodged in a separate hall adjoining the Meher Ashram proper, some distance away from the master's seat. However, it was on the 1st of July that the fanning of the flame of love began, as on that day the spiritual classes that had during the past 2 months been postponed since Sinadai were reopened for the Meher Ashram boys. On the 5th of July, the master actually remained confined to his box like seat by the Druni and partook of nothing save water for the next 24 hours. But the very next day, he came out and began taking food as usual, conveying. This particular spot is not suitable for the purpose. Of course, the lovesick boys, who were greatly reassured with the near approach of the moment of the final touch, showed great concern at the. Karthik, can you move it up?
yeah.
Unexpected coming out of retirement of the master, who, however, restored their confidence with the following words: Don't be impatient. You won't be able to digest it so soon. I will surely make you the envy of all. But within the next 24 hours, he proved that besides the spot being unsuitable, there were other reasons for his unexpected exit.
Yeah. 1 second. I'm trying to light the lamp here. Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay. On 7th of July 1928, quite suddenly, as a jack in the box, none other than Ali's father once again cropped up at Mehrabad with a pretty fine yarn. He said he had recently heard in Bombay that the master had absconded and all the ashram boys had gone raving mad. But the very sight of the progressive state of affairs at Toka was enough to set his fears at rest, and it did not take long for the ashram authorities to give him complete satisfaction, and he returned to Bombay at ease the following day after seeing his son quite sane and safe. From this time onward, the master once again began to get all absorbed in the affairs of the little ones. Not only the Premashram boys, but all the rest were begun to be impressed with spirituality in various ways. The beginning of August witnessed almost a craze for divine contemplation amongst them. Leaving aside the lovelorn boys, many in Meher Ashram too were reported to getting a voluntary hours before the morning bell and sitting for meditation. Some of them even rose as early as 1 o'clock in the morning and sat unmoved and quiet, engrossed in contemplation of the Master. Just in the thick of the arrival of this spiritual atmosphere, Ali's father all of a sudden presented himself at Toka for the second time. Nay, he was once again on the war path. I want to take Ali with me, was the same old song on his lips, since he had already caused enough trouble to the Meher Ashram and its authorities, had on had on more than one occasion gone back on his word of honor. He naturally felt ashamed to ask for Ali's withdrawal directly. I want to take the boy home for a few days and bring him back soon, he said, but the authorities compelled him through logical objections to come to the point and leave off the tricks. While thus disposed, he could make no secret of his having been influenced by a certain gentleman whom I call here Mr. J. Mr. J had stayed at Mehrabad before this for nearly a year and enjoyed the master's hospitality and taken full advantage of the HBH school during his long period when he used to behave like a great devotee of the master. I remember clearly as early as the month of April 1928, in the course of some discussion, the master had conveyed, this J is not what he appears. He will prove a traitor. Then why did the master not dismiss him at that very moment? It's a question that would naturally crop up in the mind of a critic. But there are many more of it kind, for instance, why the master, who is possessed of powers supernatural, did not stop the devil's work itself, or why, for all his wisdom and foresight, the Almighty did not nip the Satan in the bud instead of creating the sorry business of continuing an eternal duel with the devil through saints and prophets. Then again, was Christ, the all-knowing Master, really unaware of the serpent in the grass? Judas, when he kept him near as one of his special disciples. I'm sure the coming man, be it Imam Mahdi, the second Christ, son of Zoroaster, Kalanki Avatar, Lord Buddha, Superman of science and evolution, or the combination of them all, will explain this soon to the world in words as well as in deeds. In the meantime, I will continue the narrative as it is without haggling over mere intellectual arguments. So,
So I think the reference here is Kalki Avatar,
okay.
but I have not heard this Imam Mehdi. So is that uh, uh, a second. I mean, I don't know. Yeah, Mahu, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, much better now. Thank you.
Okay, wonderful. Uh, Imam Mehdi, when Baba was Muhammad, just the previous Advent, he
Hmm.
also had 12 disciple inner circle and two women. It's always like that. So the 12 Imam, but it was going in chronological order. First Imam, for example, was Ali, uh,
Okay.
which many people say Erich plays that role. And Imam Mehdi, nobody seen saw him. So Baba created this mystical kind of suspense that Imam Mehdi has disappeared, and when the world get through a lot of chaotic and people are fighting this that, then he will be back to rescue the humanity. So for us who read this in Islam, we know Imam Mehdi is Mir Baba. So he's calling Baba different name, Imam Mehdi, second Christ, Kalki avatar, like that.
Ah, okay, got it. Okay, so
Yeah.
he's okay, got it. Interesting. So, I didn't know about this Imam Mehdi reappearance being linked to Baba. That's interesting. Firstly, I did not know about this Imam Mehdi, but
There is another name for him in case you hear. It's called Sahib az-Zaman. Some
Sahib e
people,
Zaman. Yeah,
yeah,
Sahib e Zaman.
Sahib al-Zaman is the same as Imam Mehdi, who's supposed to come, and it's the same as Baba said, I'm going to break my silence and manifestation will be completed. So now we know what will be going on, and that's it. He is the Imam Mehdi. Yeah.
So Sahib e
Karthik,
Zaman, I think, is referred to in the supplements in God Speaks, where is equated as one of the terms for avatar. So you have
Yeah.
the Sufi term as Sahib e Zaman. It is, I think, equated to the other two, which are Kutub for perfect master and Kutub e Irshad for the avatar. Correct?
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
mostly connected to Avatar. So
Yeah,
Hebe Zaman, yeah, the own. Hmm.
maybe Sahib is Zaman is specifically for used in the context of Imam Mehdi. So interesting. Thank
Yeah,
you for that
they made
insight.
it as a Sufi term in God Speaks. Yeah.
Hmm, hmm. Okay, Ashok,
Karthik,
you were
can you
saying
just,
something.
yeah, Karthik, can you just go back? There's a mention about second Christ. I want to read that again.
Sure.
This is, I'm sure the coming man, be it Imam Mehdi, the second Christ, son of Zoroaster, Kalkani Avatar, last Buddha, Superman of science and evolution, or the combination of them all, will explain all this to the world in words as well as in deeds. In the meantime, I will continue the narrative as it is without haggling over mere intellectual arguments. So, yeah, now it's clear that it's just is the same avatar in different names in different times.
And again, to set the context of this book, this is early to mid 1928. So Baba was just called His Holiness by Ramjoo Abdullah. He was referring to himself as Sadguru sometimes. He obviously was called Guru. And so he's not yet announced his status, right? So that's where it is.
Yeah,
Okay. Maybe a few more pages or maybe a little bit, and then we can rotate again. Ashok.
yeah, yeah, definitely. Through certain selfish motives, Mr. J suddenly began to appear in his true colors after shifting to Toka and found fault with everything at Mehrabad. The master, when he got an open charge of faithlessness proved against him, summarily dismissed J from Mehrabad on the 21st of July. And naturally, since then, the young man began to poisoned the minds of the Mughal community against the institution and its authorities with unfounded falsehoods, which resulted in the presence of the appearance of Ali's father at Toka. The authorities still tried their best in bringing around Ali's prejudiced father to the right point for 2 whole days and nights, but the man remained adamant and would listen to no rhyme or reason. The authorities, therefore, on the strength of the stamped bond, simply refused to allow the boy back unless the gentleman made good the cost of the boy's education and maintenance to date. Of course, this demand was not made with the object of really getting the just compensation of the gentleman, but rather to strike home to him the consequences of his hasty conclusions. Ali's father went away from Hyderabad, but not to Bombay. On the 14th of August, he was reported of complaining to the local police, who referred him to higher authorities, and then for following few days, Mr. Hazi Muhammad remained very busy in trying to steer the machinery of law into motion in support of his case. Thus, once again, devil and divinity were at loggerheads with a vengeance. On the one hand, Ali's father was trying to call the law to his aid. On the other, Master was busy instructing the boys in the laws of love. The short period of 5 days during which all this happened was very remarkable. The revival of spiritual atmosphere was against almost at its height, but unlike the last violent manifestation, the present outburst was singularly silent, although no less strong and decided. Instead of the weeping and wailing of the majority of the boys of both the sections of the Meher Ashram, developed a peculiar divine insomnia, which was at the same time quite harmless. Some of the Prem Ashram boys hardly slept at night or during the day, even for an hour, yet for all they looked no less active, bright, and cheerful than those who had slept normally. From this time onward, for several days, the master made it a rule to call at the school and during the recess periods, interview each of the boys reported as being awake for meditation, inquiring as to how he fared for the loss of sleep, and after conveying an encouraging word, a pat or an embrace would let him go. Besides the inmates of the Prem Ashram, no less than 27 boys in the Meher Ashram were noticed getting up as early as 2 o'clock in the morning. In spite of the serious insomnia through the master's gaze, every one of them was able, in defiance of the law of nature, to discharge his daily duties without a flaw in school, the dining hall, and on the playground. But the history was to repeat itself on the 19th of August, just in the midst of a prize distribution gathering in connection with the previous day holiday sports at 5 in the evening. The ashram authorities were served with a legal writ by Ali's father demanding the boy back. This gave rise to a keen discussion between the master and the disciples for nearly 2 hours. The latter were divided into two groups. The one advocated the law to take its own course, the other thought it advisable not to proceed further and hand over the boy at once. Strange enough, the master sided with the last group and was finally decided to give up the hero. Consequently, besides Ali, some other Mughal boys were also handed over to their respective guardians, who were accompanying Mr. Sayyid Haji Muhammad at about 7:30 the same evening. I would avoid repetition of the touching scenes and the gloom that overshadowed Mehrabad at the time when the master conveyed the following words. Ali is best among those given up today. The poor boy will suffer much. However, the sufferings for my sake will bring him nearer to me. If he is allowed to stay so much the better. If he goes mad with the suffering, they themselves, Ali's father and relations, will bring him back to me. Even if he dies through the shocks that his relations are pressing in causing to him, he will come unto me. He has one thing, love, and very intense love, that one thing that none can rob him of.
Lovely. So there goes Ali for the second time. So he's taken away by his father.
When he talks about the intense love and longing,
Yes, yes, yes. So,
if somebody else can read and or you can
yeah,
repeat.
yeah, sure. Thank you so much, Ashok. Ravi, are you in a position to read?
Yes, I can.
Great. So we can start with 18, chapter 18, the second bid for freedom.
Avatar Meher Baba Ki Jai. The second bid for freedom. After the second forced exit of Ali from the ashram, to all appearances, no hitch was perceptible in the atmosphere. On the contrary, the divine outburst of feelings and enthusiasm amongst the boys was gained ground by leaps and bounds. Besides, the master ceased to show the great concern that he had displayed on the last location, and no attempt therefore was made to get Ali back from his father as before. But the master never seemed to have forgotten the hero and his position as the leader amongst the little lovers. He continued inspiring the rest of the boys, and within 3 days of Ali's going away on the 22nd of August, he got all the rules and regulations of the Meher Ashram suspended for about a month, in respect of all the boys who might be near him nor his seat. None of the boys were, according to this order, ever called away from him, or restricted from going to him whenever they liked. Consequently, the person of the master, when he happened to be out and about, was a sight for the gods to see. He was like a Christmas tree surrounded by a crowd of little ones, each trying frantically to reach it and grasp at its inviting branches, full of sparkling toys and novelties. But since this tree of knowledge, the master's person, had but only 4 branches and 20 twigs in the shape of hands, feet, and fingers, and the strain and pulse it had to bear against scores of hands grasping and pulling at it may well be imagined than written. Of course, there were no toys and novelties about the master's person, but in their place his sparkling brown eyes, his rosy lips parted in a loving smile disclosing some of the pearly teeth, and his golden and shining ringlets, and above all, his genial temper were enough to madden them with joy. And such onslaughts on his person by the boys were so frequent that the master was often seen playing a sort of a game of hide and seek with them, while going from one place to the other in the surroundings of the Meher Ashram. How seriously the master looked bent upon making some fresh additions to the Prema Ashram will be seen from the fact that on the 28th of August, His Holiness came out of his retirement as early as 3 o'clock in the morning and personally inspected the many little ones who were sitting in meditation at the cost of sweet sleep, which can only be judged by one who has had the experience of being disturbed from it at such an hour. By this time, some of the Meher Ashram boys can fairly be said to have gone mad after the master and his photos, which were now in great demand. They were not satisfied with the large variety of master's photos. They were already in stock, and copies of which had been freely distributed among them, but insisted upon the masters appearing in many fantastic grabs that get photographed. The master, too, went much out of his way during this period and condescended to fulfill the peculiar fancies of these enthusiasts and let himself be photographed in many postures and dresses, as he had never done before.
So in the earlier chapters, there is a reference of Baba dressing up as Krishna. Yeah.
On his birthday, right?
I think Krishna Jayanti, yes, but it was
Krishna
not clear
Jayanti,
because the
Yeah,
date
Krishna
was
Jayanti.
more around February. The date was more around February, March, but I that's what I remember.
Yeah.
Because Krishna Jayanti is later in the year, but anyway, he did dress up as Krishna. Yeah.
The unprecedented extent to which the enthusiasm went will be judged from such surprising event that on the 5th of September, as early as 11 o'clock at night, some of the boys tumbled out of their respective beddings and ran straight to the master's seat. The night watchman and those of the disciples that were still about were simply held spellbound with surprise. But in face of the recent suspension of rules, none could stop the boys from going there and calling out loudly for the master to come out. Those who believe can alone derive the significance of disturbing a kutub or sadguru of the age in this way and at such an hour. The master not only came out, but instead of taking the boys to task, as was expected by some, he patted them and conveyed some reassuring and encouraging words, though, of course, from that moment he enjoined upon them certain rules, which also forbade them to disturb him again in this way. From the 10th of September, the master once again resumed the much expected fasting program and began to remain on a quarter of a cup of milk twice a day only. It is time we turn our attention to Ali. Although I am not sure about the date of Ali's second bid for freedom, as when I asked him about it later on, he said, I remember it was about 20 days after they took me away, which nearly coincided with the day on which the master recommended fasting as stated above. On that particular day, Ali was sitting sadly outside his father's tea shop near Ketwadi, Bombay, resting his head on his seething bosom, contemplating his painful situation. It was nearly sunset. Although his father was not there, one of the partners were keeping a watchful eye on the boy. And since Ali had already given a slip last time, this partner was very careful and so far had proved a man not to be easily caught napping, as for all his constant thoughts of an escape. The boy had failed to get an opportunity. A friend of the gentleman who kept watch over Ali happened to call upon him at that moment and began to talk with him. The latter had first proved himself alive to the possibility of his missing Ali in the interesting TTATT, as he asked Ali to come in. But without any particular scheme in view, the boy quite innocently said that he preferred to remain where he was. And the gentleman was good enough to let the boy have his way, but continued to call out his name at regular intervals. For some time, the situation became very comical. Every few minutes, the watchful Mughal would cry out, Ali, where are you? Are you there, Ali? And so on. And the boy also used to shout back, as being there, till at last Ali was tired with his humbug, which was the last thing he could put up with at that moment. And so the last reply he shouted back was also a mild protest. Of course, I am here. Why do you call me again and again? But Ali was not in the least prepared for the result that his protest brought about. 4, 5, 8, and even 10 minutes passed, and there was no more calls. Ali suddenly felt an impulse. He shot a sly glance into the interior of the shop. The two men were busy in their conversation, perhaps engrossed in their favorite topic of the glories of Persia. Quick as lightning, Ali came to a decision and with equal swiftness put the same into action. With a bound, he was off and began to spring from house to house and corner to corner, keeping himself under cover through the owing to rain, muddy lanes and by lanes of Ketwadi. This time the boy was well prepared in the matter of funds and already had a 10 rupee note neatly tucked in somewhere.
Ashok, you have to mute. Yeah, go ahead, Ravi.
Sorry.
Need to pull up
Yeah, yeah.
Karthik.
Yeah. So the
About him.
last time, if you remember, I think it was a rupee or two that Ali took away from the cash box, and that's all he had. But then that barely got him. I mean, that was barely enough to make his passage and probably get to Mehrabad. But now he takes a 10 rupee note. Yeah.
10 rupee note, yeah. Be instinctively aware of the chase, he came straight to the Victoria Terminus station, booked himself for Ahmednagar, and at the first opportunity jumped into the same old Madras mail. Preoccupied with the thoughts of picking out his pursuers, Ali forgot to keep himself under cover and was sitting prominently by the window of a carriage. In the fever heat of the moment, he missed spotting the person that he dreaded most, and thus failed in the very purpose of his lookout. Somehow his father happened to come unnoticed by the carriage in which Ali was sitting. Ali saw his father just in the nick of the time, but it was too late. Their eyes had met, but within that fraction of a second, Ali's heart called out for the master and asked for protection. Since the call was from the very depths of a highly strung souls, the omniscient power was equally swift in responding. With a great sigh of relief, Ali found out that in spite of seeing him, his father had not seen him. The gentleman passed on looking for Ali in other carriages. So Baba did his magic.
Yeah.
Within few minutes of his miraculous event, with a sharp whistle that sounded as the sweetest music to Ali at that moment, the train began to move out of the great terminus. From the moving train, keeping himself well under cover, Ali tried to locate his father and found him with some other Mughals taking excitedly along the receding platform. Wire telegram were the only words that reached Ali's ears. He thought that perhaps they still suspected his presence in the train and were thinking of sending telegrams to the authorities for his arrest. Naturally, he expected trouble at the next halt, and so the poor soul remained under cover until the train had passed out of Kalyan. At the junction of Dond, to his great honor, Ali found a confounded policeman much interested in him, yet somehow the hero succeeded in easing the suspicions of the representative of law and managed to proceed further. Lest the station master at Ahmednagar might have been telegraphed to, the boy took great pains in slipping out of the platform as far as possible unseen and unnoticed, and succeeded in arriving unchallenged at the city motor stand to get a lift in one of the public motor buses that ran daily between Ahmednagar and Toka. Forgetting that there were many a slip betwixt the cup and the lip, Ali thought that he was at last out of the wood when he took his seat in one of the buses and lost himself in his thoughts of the master. However, the driver of the bus became suspicious about him and, on the pretense of taking tea, quietly entered a Mughal tea shop near the motor stand and informed the proprietor, who happened to be a friend of Ali's father and knew the station situation well. The latter at once hurried to the spot where Ali was quietly seated, all engrossed in the thoughts of the master. Ali became dumbfounded, motionless, and lost the balance of his mind for some seconds at the sudden sight of the Mughal. The gentleman, who is a Mughal?
So I forget. We so it's
We,
the usage is for a particular type of Muslim.
uh-huh.
I looked it up in Wikipedia that time. So it's so I think it was I forget. Let me do it again. Anyway, continue and we'll take a break and look at it. Yeah.
Yeah, the gentleman, of course, greatly but firmly caught hold of Ali's sleeve and led him to the shop, where soon after Mr. Hazi Muhammad's telegram was received, authorizing the very gentleman to detain Ali until he came over there himself. True to this telegram, Ali's father shortly turned up at Ahmednagar and took away the poor boy back to Bombay. In the course of a lengthy discussion with European police officer that the writer had on the day following the one which Ali was given up, 20th August, as one of the arguments against the hesitation of Meher Ashram authorities in giving up the boys, the gentleman had said, were it not for this section of the Indian Penal Code about illegal confinement, it would have been possible to relieve slavery. He was right in a general sense, but little did he know that civilized freedom at times proves worse than slavery itself, as it has done in the case of Ali.
Yeah, so let me show you what I found. I'm not able to find exactly what I found last time, but basically it's the Central Asian Muslims that are
Okay.
called Mughals,
Probably
as
that's,
opposed.
yeah, what I'm thinking is probably those, the Mughal Empire was there for more than 100 years. Whoever is connected with that Mughal Empire, Muslims, probably they are called Mughals.
No, but then I'm from our history and our understanding of the past as Indians growing up in the early, I mean, in 70s and 80s, I have not come across this usage, right? I have not come
Mhm.
across some people being called Mughals within the Muslim community. So I was,
The
yeah,
first
I
time
think
used it.
this is what I found. No, I found, yeah, like other, they have a caste association known as Jamaat in Uttar Pradesh. There's some particular subgroup I found that um, was probably relevant. If I go back to the videos, I can find it. In the
Uh,
last two groups, yeah.
Mm.
yeah, I have a saying about who Mughal was. Actually, I reaffirmed it by Google it. I read it
Uh-huh.
from the Google.
Sure.
The best is to search for Mughal Muslim, because there's one branch of Muslim people. They have Ismaili, they have Mughal, they have different fraction. But this one particularly is the one, it says the Mughal dynasty that between 1526 and 1858 was among the richest and longest ruling in India, and at its peak controlled large portions of the Indian subcontinent. So they were widespread. The Mughals were Muslims of Central Asian origin, and Persian was their court language. That's who the Mughal was. So this guy
Yeah.
was one of those models.
Thank you. Thank you. So that's exactly what um, we learned in history, but I can't imagine people calling e- uh, other people in India in the 20s Mughals. So that's what was surprising. But I found one reference which was very specific. I think it was like you said, like Ismaili. I found a particular subgroup like Ismaili, Bori. There was something that said that those were called Mughals, but I'll find that back in the videos. Searching videos are such a pain. I wish there was a way to do text-like searches in video, right? Anyway, I'm sure that will happen as well with this AI and all the transcription that happens immediately. It's just mind-boggling at the speed of how AI is going to change our lives. So, having said that, I think I didn't mention it, but that's the end of that chapter. So, and we just have a few minutes, so we can continue with the next chapter in the coming week. So, as it has been for the last few readings, it's been a fascinating session of recreating the period and the work that Baba was doing with these boys. It's amazing. Yeah. So I hope all of you enjoyed the read as much as I did.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Mahu, now that you have better audio, you were trying to ask me about my views on this. So my views haven't changed, but I just have a better appreciation, and I think I think that that's all I have to say. I don't want to belabor the point and get back to that topic, but I just thought I'll say so much.
Sure. When you say about this, since I joined a little bit late, I don't know what this is.
Oh, so
What's it? Mhm.
it's basically this entire concept of trying to get the almost equality or the right way of dealing with LGBTQ and those of other tendencies, which I think is deserved. But I think the politics of it is a little too far. I don't agree with the politics of it, but I don't want to get into the politics on a call like this. It's not the right thing to do, right? I think
And you are recording. You want to non-record it?
yeah, maybe that's a good idea.
Yeah.
So
I
let's
make a
wrap up.
comment.
Let's wrap up
Hmm.
on the reading. So any thoughts from the chapter that we'd like to talk before I stop recording?
Uh, After you stop recording, I
Okay.
make my comment.
Okay. So